This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What if comparing car insurance rates was as easy as putting on your favorite podcast? With Progressive, it is. Just visit the Progressive website to quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's direct rate, and then their tool will provide options from other companies, so you can compare. All you need to do is choose the rate and coverage you like. Quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Sam Greenspan is not the kind of person who looks back on their undergrad days and gets wistful. Sam's never been to a college reunion or an alumni mixer. But back in the spring, they sat down to write a letter to their college newspaper.
Yeah. Let me find it.
The newspaper? It's called The Catalyst.
Dear Catalyst team, I'm a reporter and radio/podcast producer who's an alum of New College and who also happens to be queer and trans.
The Catalyst is the student paper for the New College of Florida.
I was never Catalyst staff, but if you dig through the archives, and I hope you won't, you'll find some very questionable opinion pieces I submitted over the years.
Sam was partially sending a letter of support. They'd been watching, slack-jawed, as Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis, executed a remarkably swift takeover of this tiny liberal arts school, replacing college leadership, even changing the kinds of students that got admitted. But deep in this carefully worded note was a request to return to campus and get an up-close look at how the Catalyst has been reporting on the governor's changes. Sam signs off with the written equivalent of a raised fist of solidarity.
As someone who is very unaware that I was queer and trans, but all too aware that I was a weirdo who didn't fit in, New College became my haven. If its spirit of individuality and freedom of thought wasn't such a threat to fascism, DeSantis wouldn't be trying so hard to crush it.
How quickly did you hear back?
Let me see. So I sent that on April 10th, and then I heard back from her on April 13th. And so I think maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later, I was on a plane back to Sarasota, where I hadn't been in 12, 13 years, I think.
Sam arrived to find a small but dedicated newsroom of people working to cover what's become a national story, the sudden and complete upending of every piece of New College's culture. That culture is quirky. Maybe you'd expect that on a campus where the college hall is actually a mansion built for one of the Ringling brothers. When Sam was an undergrad, the most controversial piece they submitted to the paper came after a student government election resulted in an actual student losing to a prank write-in candidate, Mr. T.
So I wrote an op-ed arguing that we should give Mr. T honorary student status so that he could hold office at the campus. I believe that's what I was writing about.
Fast forward to today, the student paper is covering stories like the college president being fired, the gender studies program getting dissolved, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office shutting down entirely. For Governor DeSantis and his allies, what's happening here is a prototype for how education can be remade everywhere. And the kids at the college paper, they know it.
You know, I think there was a lot of gallows humor. There was a lot of sort of, laughing us to not cry. But it was also just sort of like, it makes sense to me that someone who would come to New College is used to the world being kind of awful to them in large or small ways. And so in a way, maybe it wasn't totally shocking because it's like, oh yeah, of course they wouldn't let a bunch of queer kids like have their own no rules college, and then on Florida taxpayer dollar, like of course they're gonna try to gut this.
Today on the show, an inside look at what going back to school in Florida's new prototype liberal arts college is really like. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
Sometimes things in the world of technology are complicated and need careful explaining. Sometimes they just need a little hard truth.
I don't think anyone is going to buy a banana with crypto at any point in the foreseeable future.
I'm Lizzie O'Leary, the host of Slate's What Next TBD, your clear-eyed guide to technology, power, and the future. Friday and Sunday, wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Josh Levine, the host of Slate's podcast 1 Year. In our new season, we're firing up our flux capacitors and taking you way back.
1955.
1955.
We'll bring you 1955's weirdest, wildest, and most captivating stories. You'll learn about forgotten pioneers, like the TV Weather Girls, who took the country by storm.
A cute, sexy young woman was very appealing, and I can quite understand why.
And you'll discover moments from the past that resonate deeply with the present, like how a bizarre conspiracy theory infected the nation's politics.
Oh my God, they're trying to establish a prison camp. This is going to be Siberia, USA.
1 Year, 1955. Out now, wherever you listen.
Let's start by talking about what New College is all about, or what it has been about before this year. It's a tiny school with just under 1,000 students. It was founded in 1960 as an experimental private college, but in 1975, it became part of the Florida state system. It kept its unique character, though. For Floridians, it promised the vibe of a small, quirky liberal arts school, but with an in-state price tag.
It's a very DIY place where people, for lack of a better word, like, the weirdos from high school would go and find each other, and just had this kind of incredible space to just build whatever you wanted to in terms of the campus culture, in terms of your education. It was really only limited by your imagination.
And it has no grades, right?
Yeah. That's right. So New College is unique in a lot of ways. There's no grades, and every student gets a written evaluation for every class. There's no credits. Every student has a contract with an academic advisor. And there's no real required classes. Like disciplines will have their own requirements, but there's no core classes or anything like that. And it's also really, really small. I mean, it's, so when I studied anthropology there were 3 faculty members, in my division.
And it's always been a little bit turbulent, right? Like in 2020, there was a push to combine New College with the larger University of Florida. It seems like for a little while now, Florida has been trying to solve the problem of New College, if you want to put it that way, although I'm sure the people on campus would not call it a problem. But you know what I mean? There was some sense of that.
I think that's right. I think New College stands out when you just look at the numbers of New College in terms of how much is the college spending per student. It's super high compared with other schools because there's just fewer students, and just the way that math works, I guess, makes it look like a huge aberration. And New College, it has had a bit of a I don't know if it's turbulent exactly, but it's had a history in a lot of flux. So I know that what really helped the school for a long time was that a Florida lawmaker named Bob Johnson was an early and ardent supporter of the school, and he was a Republican state lawmaker who had enough clout to kind of protect the school for a long time. He just really believed in it. I was talking to an alum who was there in my year, and he was telling me that he was recalling a time when he was watching I think it was the Bush-Kerry debates with a campus administrator, and the administrator said, it's a good thing that we have Bob Johnson looking out for us, because all it would really take would be for Congress or the governor to decide there's too many gay people at that weird Florida school and just kill it. And he said that conversation happened around 2003, 2004, I guess.
Wow. Seems prescient now.
Yeah, the student told me that it gave him a lot of perspective on how fragile the place was. And even at the kind of highest levels of the school government, the school administration rather, knew that they were, a little bit precarious.
This feeling of precariousness came to a head back at the beginning of the year when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis set his sights on overhauling New College.
What it is. And so the mission has been, I think, more into the DEI, CRT, the gender ideology, rather than what a liberal arts education should be. And so we're going to be able, I think, to offer some.
He appointed 6 new members of the Board of Trustees, essentially giving the board a conservative majority. The new members included a dean of a conservative Christian college, Hillsdale, and also Christopher Rufo, the Manhattan Institute fellow who is credited with launching a panic over critical race theory in schools. But even Sam didn't realize how serious the change was going to be until the new trustees met for a board meeting at the end of January.
I think everybody can hear me if I speak up. And so I'm calling the meeting to order, and we'll have roll call.
I was starting to write a thing for them, the Condé Nast LGBT magazine, about the changes. And my first draft was like pretty jokey, I think, and pretty like, oh, they're deciding to, pick on the little guys at New College. But it's always kind of a little bit of a shit show over there anyways. But when I watched it, I was like, holy cow, this is for real. Like, this is for
Trustee
real.
Kessler?
Here.
Trustee Lipinski?
Here.
Trustee Mackey?
And what did they do in the meeting?
They walk in, they sit around the dais, and, in a lot of ways, it looks pretty normal. They're just people, in suits and business attire, just sitting around a table on a grainy live feed. So basically, they just start grandstanding about the school and what they want to do with it and how the school is failing and how it's a good thing that they're there to rescue it.
This college is languishing. It needs to be revived. It's got a great potential future. It can be much larger, much more influential, much more flourishing in the Florida system.
Is the school failing by some metric?
The metrics that they were using was like, I think students who graduate in 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, which I think are maybe lower than the average at, the rest of the Florida university system. So the new trustees were able to find some metric by which they were able to argue that New College was failing and good thing that they were there to rescue it. But I would say students and alums and certainly faculty saw through it like immediately. It looked like a hostile takeover.
So I think the terms of this agreement clearly signal a recognition on all parties' parts that current leadership is not appropriate for the situation in which we find ourselves.
Agreed.
They spent like 45 minutes examining the terms of the school president's employment contract. Like, they're on the dais. She's sitting right there.
So I'd like to make a motion that we terminate President Oker based on the terms reflected in the...
And they're just like reading, having the school lawyer like read them and interpret the subclauses around termination so they can figure out how to do it, legally. And then they just fire her.
Trustee Bauerlein?
Yes.
Trustee Jinks?
Yes.
Trustee Karp?
Yes.
Trustee Keenan?
And then they fired the legal counsel. One guy was there giving them the legal, in the first place.
Wow. So at the end of this meeting, the president's out, and it's very clear the college is headed in a different direction. Yeah. It was kind of the first shot. And then I think 2 months after that initial firing, the initial meeting, they installed Richard Corcoran, who's the former Speaker of the House for the Florida State House. He also used to lead the Department of Education in Florida for the state, right? He did. That is correct. He also, I believe, has a number of corruption allegations against him as well. Well, he's also been very outspoken about how he sees education. Like, he's spoken very publicly about the fact that he sees education as a sword, a weapon, essentially. And clearly he sees who is learning what and how as an existential crisis. I hadn't heard that exactly, but it makes a ton of sense from what I know about him. I mean, this is the guy who told his, admission staff that they were his SEAL Team 6 in, recruiting the next wave of student athletes, right? That new wave of student athletes was just one of many changes that followed the board meeting back in January. But it's worth lingering on this change because before this year, New College didn't even have a baseball field. Now, nearly half of the school's incoming class is made up of student athletes. The trustees made other changes, both big and small, They denied tenure to 5 faculty members. They eliminated the gender studies major for future classes. And they axed the school's diversity, equity, and inclusion office. The students at the college paper who Sam was following noticed other changes, too, like a change to the school mascot and a new on-campus cafe whose paper cups had Bible verses on them.
Tell me how the year ended last year. Like, I know you were reporting during graduation, right?
Yeah. So basically, these 2 students, graduating students, had this idea that they wanted there to be an off-campus graduation as like a protest graduation, as like this is the true graduation because the other one is just going to be a farce.
Yeah. Why was that important to them? The official graduation, what was upsetting about it?
Yeah. So the school announced that its speaker was going to be Scott Atlas, who is a radiologist who advised Trump on COVID policy. And remember, these are students that lived through COVID. One of the organizers, Maddie Markham, she lost both her grandparents to COVID. And so it felt like the ultimate slap in the face, I think, to these students. At this point, they just want to get their diplomas and leave. And it's like, and the school administration is like politicizing this thing that's like supposed to be, a celebration of them. So basically this like ragtag group of graduating students and a couple alums put together a GoFundMe, and they raised $132,000 in like under a month. And they booked an art museum, about a few miles from campus. And every graduating student and their family was able to go.
What was the feeling? Because I feel like it could be celebratory or it could be a little solemn.
Oh my God, it was joyous. It was joyous.
We, as a community, are not capable of the cruelty they are inflicting, thanks to the love that we share with each other.
Was it joyous, partially because these students, most of them were leaving?
I think so. I think for the students, at least, it felt like an end cap, a moment in time for them to like remember, like, you know what, we did this. And we are the class that had so much adversity to just get our education. We came to New College for a reason, and we love this place, and we just want to celebrate it.
After the break, new year, new college. Can this place withstand such a massive cultural shift? Hey, friend, before you hit fast forward through this ad, let me just bend your ear a tick and tell you all about Slate Plus, Slate's membership program. Do you know that What Next is going to be here for you? Whether there's big breaking news or whether you just want to hear about a story you might have missed. Basically, we've got you totally covered. And we're here thanks to Slate. If you want to support us, and I know you do, the best way to do that is to join Slate Plus. It'll get you all connected with Slate's award-winning journalism. You'll get ad-free podcasts. You'll get Plus exclusive content on shows like Slow Burn and Political Gabfest. And you'll never hit a paywall on the Slate site. Every new membership helps ensure we can continue bringing you the biggest stories each week. So go on, hit the pause button and go to slate.com/whatnextplus. Again, that's slate.com/whatnextplus. All right, on with the show.
So you kind of left off with graduation, but now it's September. Classes have just started back up at New College. What is your sense of how the year's going so far? My understanding is that in the last few months, a lot of students have transferred out and a lot of faculty have left, like a stunning amount. Can you just characterize the change that's happened?
I don't know if I can swear here, but the best way to describe this would be a shit show, I think.
Huh.
It looks like absolute chaos on the campus. So around 40 faculty members from New College out of like 90. So it's like 40 of 90 are not there.
Whoa.
Some left, some took leave. So there's a lot of reports of classes just getting canceled. The school administration is ardent that that's not happening, but there's plenty of evidence that it is. Students are being told like, hey, your biology class is canceled. Try taking something else. The dorms that have historically been given to upperclassmen, these kind of apartment style dorms with their own kitchen, those were just taken away from all of the returning students and given to these incoming athletes. And, not that they shouldn't have good housing facilities, but it seems very much like a supremacy move of just giving, like students are being told this is not for you anymore.
Where were they placed instead?
They're put in 2 different hotels, one close-ish to the college, one about 4 miles away. And I think they're like not allowed to have guests and not allowed to cook. It's very confusing and very authoritarian, it seems. There's like a shuttle bus that runs like once an hour, maybe, or something. But like, a lot of students don't have cars. And it's not a place with functional public transit. And I just saw yesterday, I think it's around a third of the returning New College students are not coming back.
It's almost comical. It's like a Revenge of the Nerds subplot kind of thing.
It's like Revenge of the Nerds or something. It's like, it's Revenge of the Jocks, I guess. I mean, and again, I don't want to disparage the students who are coming in to play sports, because I think all the students are kind of bound up in this together. It just, any appearance that, the administration was putting up of, like, as Richard Corcoran said, like, we're not subtracting, we're adding here, to paraphrase him. Any appearance of that is just gone now, that they're basically just kicking these students to the curb.
The students are one thing, but with the faculty that have been leaving, the impression I get from the administration is they're saying basically, okay, great, we're cleaning house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a takeover. It's there, it's you have this external group that is coming in and ripping the resources away for the people that they think are more important. I mean, that's what supremacy is. So one of the students that I spoke with for my story, Basil Pursley, who was a copy editor at The Catalyst, he's just brilliant kid, had wanted to go to New College since he was like, basically like 12 or so, and was just really flourishing there. And was just sort of like, okay, well, there's some changes, some jocks are going to come, maybe a professor or two will leave, but like, it's going to be a little chaotic. But New College is a place that Basil wanted to go since he was like 12. So he wasn't like about to just up and leave. I mean, his plan had been to just rush through, and graduate early, but his partner's faculty advisor left, and his faculty advisor left, and then he found out that he wasn't even going to have his dorm, and he was going to be either stuck in some hotel or some other part of campus that he didn't want to live in. And so he joined the ranks of a pretty big number of students, I think around 40 at this point, who have basically been airlifted to Hampshire College in Western Massachusetts.
Because Hampshire basically said you can pay your same tuition that you've been paying to New College here.
Yeah, which is incredible. I mean, it's not totally out of the blue. New College and Hampshire have had a kind of reciprocity agreement for a long time. And they're sort of in a consortium of like innovative, experimental colleges, something like that. So there's like around 40 students who are starting at Hampshire. And that I think is going to be really interesting to see how they do. It's sort of like the New College community in exile. And there are, and Basil told me that him, his partner, and 2 other New College students, one of them a Catalyst person as well, are all getting like a little dorm together at the Hampshire campus.
Just in the last week or so, I noticed that Christopher Rufo, one of these new trustees who was appointed by Ron DeSantis, he penned an editorial where he pushed back against the concern voiced by students at New College and journalists too. And I want to just talk about the points he made. He made one point that resonated with me, which is that when you read reporting about what's happening at New College, the same people come up again and again. It's the same voices who are saying that what's happening is unfair and wrong. And I just wonder, is it fair to say that it's a small number of people in the college community who are resisting the changes that the governor wants to make here?
I haven't read it, but the short answer is no. I didn't talk to a single person at New College who wasn't at least a little concerned. These students who are coming forward are very brave, and like a lot of them are concerned for their safety.
Yeah, I mean, Christopher Rufo made this other argument that I think is harder to swallow. He asks, why are liberals so worried about a little college in Florida? And I say it's harder to swallow because he follows that up by saying New College is a prototype and the project to reclaim authority has begun. And I feel like you can't say those two things at the same time. That like, pay no attention to the little college in Florida, but then also we're here to reclaim our authority.
Yeah, he said the quiet part out loud. I mean, he says it himself that like New College is the prototype.
You said in the past that you weren't particularly attached to New College as an alum. And I guess I wonder if that's changed at all now. Do you feel more attached or less?
I do feel attached to New College in a way that I didn't before. You know, I hadn't kept in touch with a ton of friends from the era. You know, it's a very small place and a lot of small town politics can apply. And, you know, it was a place that I was really glad to be a part of and a place I was glad to move on from. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I never owned a single piece of New College swag until this takeover happened. The first thing I did was I went online and I bought a New College sweater because I'm like, these are going to become collector's items soon.
Do you picture yourself going to like a reunion at some point?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I kind of have to see how this shakes out. But I live pretty far from Florida now. But you know, through this process of reporting, I've reconnected with a bunch of people who are still there. And it made me realize how much I do care about this special, weird little nook, you know, on a former circus magnate's backyard.
Sam, I'm so grateful for your time and your reporting. Thank you for taking this time with me.
Thank you so much.
Sam Greenspan is a freelance journalist and an alum of New College. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osborne, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We're led by Alicia Montgomery with a little help from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Twitter, X, whatever you're using. I'm at Mary's Desk. Thanks for listening. Catch you tomorrow.